This is from Deborah Williams. The name of the book is Last Days Glory. A vision that changed one woman's thinking about the end times. So some of you may be familiar with her. She has a YouTube channel that is called Midnight Cry with Deborah. So she claims to be a modern day prophet. I was watching her a lot for a while. I really liked her because we had a very similar testimony. She also struggled with depression and God has healed her. So anyway, I bought her book. Well, and surprise, 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 the book is all about this vision that she had that was obviously the same vision. And so I'm going to read some of it to you. It's really long, so I'm going to read a little bit of it, and then I'm going to kind of summarize it. So her vision starts, she's with her friend, and the two of them are in a car driving down a lonely stretch of country road. It was an ink black night. No light was visible anywhere except the headlights of the car. The moon was not shining, not even a star was visible. So if you remember the beginning of the visions that we hear about in this book, everything was black, darker than dark. We had just been remarking how dark the night had seemed when suddenly in the distant sky appeared a golden glow. As we watched, the brilliance of the light intensified more and more as it drew nearer, and the clouds began to boil around and through the light as if a tempest was brewing in the heavens. Suddenly, bursting through the center of those radiant, turbulent clouds appeared a team of mighty horses and a chariot. In the chariot there stood a man. He was firmly gripping the reins in his right hand, and instantly I knew that this was the Lord Jesus Christ himself. With great excitement, I thought, this must be the rapture. The joy of the Lord filled our vehicle as the light spread across the night sky from east to west. This unearthly holy light seemed to emanate from the chariot, the horses, and the man. And then in an instant, the whole heavens were ablaze with the glory of it all, the glory of God. In breathless anticipation, I turned to my companion and I asked, do you see him? Do you see Jesus? And she could see him too. She said, yes, I see Jesus. I could see the face of Jesus plainly now. He was smiling a smile of perfect peace. It was a peace like I'd never before experienced in my life. His gaze seemed to seep into my very soul. And without words, he said with his gaze, "Take courage, my daughter. Everything is under my control. There is nothing to fear." As the chariot began to turn northward, he reached out his left hand and beckoned me in a sweeping gesture that very clearly gave an invitation to follow. It said without a doubt, "I want you to come with me." And within my heart, there was no hesitation. By the time we arrived at the place where the chariot turned, the vision went up from us and disappeared as suddenly as it had appeared. So she was thinking this was the rapture. But then the vision just ended. My friend began to weep sorrowfully. Oh, why did he leave us here? Because she thought it was the rapture too, but she thought that it had happened and they were left behind. So you remember that Left Behind series back in the probably 70s, 80s? So that's what she thought happened. But the peace I had witnessed on the face of Jesus had somehow seeped into my soul. And I comforted her by saying, "I don't understand, but I know it's okay. I know he hasn't left us." Okay, so, and then she goes on to say, this is still her vision, okay? So she goes on to say, they didn't know what to do. So they drove to a Christian friend's house. And so when they got to their friend's house, there were all these other Christian friends there. And surprisingly, they had all had exactly the same vision at the same time. And some of them were freaking out because they thought it was the rapture and they'd all been left behind. So they turned on this Christian news station, TBN, and they were amazed to find that everything was going crazy there because they were getting inundated by all these phone calls by other people. Christians over the entire country had the same vision at the same time. So wow. This was in 1993 when she had this vision. So obviously, there are some differences. The biggest difference is that she saw Jesus in a chariot with horses. But the similarities, again, are striking. It was a corporate vision of Jesus in the sky that everybody saw at the same time. And remember, the two different responses are either this terror or this ecstasy, which is what I felt. And she and her friends all had that same just euphoria, ecstatic experience of seeing Jesus, you know. And so anyway, So she had a very similar response to it that I did. She knew it was big. She knew it was significant. She knew it was from God. It increased her faith. But she didn't know what to do with it. She's like, what in the world? She didn't have any frame of reference for this particular vision. So she kind of put it aside. This was back in 1993, kind of forgot about it. And then years and years later, God had brought it back to her life. She talks about it in the book. There were some things that happened that brought it back. And he instructed her to write a book about it. And so that's this book. And so anyway, 24 years later, this book came out in 2017. Okay, so 24 years after she had the vision, she wrote this book. And here's something from her book where she kind of like sums it up in like her takeaway. Here's how she looks at that vision experience now. From that moment of revelation to this moment of writing, a fire has burned in my heart with the promise that Jesus is going to soon reveal himself to his people in our nation. It will be a revelation like there has never been in the history of the faith. There has never been a witness of thousands of believers all seeing the same vision. I believe it is going to burst upon the American believers all at once. They are going to know Jesus in a way they have never imagined. They are going to see him corporately. So I love this. I love this final word that she gives. So I do think it's kind of interesting that the different ways, I think that the way that you believe, that your kind of your doctrinal stance will kind of help you or flavor your interpretation that you have of this particular kind of vision. So for her, because she's Protestant, most of us Protestants, we know the rapture story. We've been taught that. And so when this happened to them, all of them thought, oh, it's the rapture. Now, the Catholics don't have a similar rapture teaching. And so when a Catholic person has this vision, they think the warning. So it's just different. I think that's very fascinating. Now, the Catholics say the same thing that Deborah says. They believe these are prophetic visions of something that is going to happen in the near future.